Hello, everyone. This is Rosalind Sedacca, and I'm founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network, and you're listening to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network, and the show is Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living with Rosalind Sedacca. And I'm excited to be talking to you today with a wonderful guest expert who has a lot to share and comes with a wealth of information and background. I want to introduce you to Dr. Ali Lankerani, and he's affectionately known by his patients as Dr. L, the parent whisperer. He's a clinical neuroscientist with a background in chiropractic medicine, and Dr. L currently runs online programs that support parents and their children and encourages healthy, growing relationships between them. So he's the perfect person for us to talk to about child-centered divorce and ways parents can support their children in the best possible way. So welcome, Dr. L.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Rosalind, and for having me on this show. I'm super excited for having this conversation. It's a really interesting topic.
Thank you. Is there anything about your background you wanted to add to the brief introduction I gave you?
No, and I'm glad that you kept it brief. And I also go by Dr. L because my last name usually is very difficult for people to say. So this is great to go by Dr. L. So thank you.
Wonderful. So we talk on this show a lot about the way parents are impacted by their own divorce and the way their children are affected. And very often parents are so caught up emotionally and psychologically in the issues around divorce, the conflict, the drama, the fears, the anxiety, that too often the children fall through the cracks and they pay the price, so to speak, for the divorce. And so I'm always looking to experts to help give us new insights about ways parents can avoid serious mistakes and handle the divorce and especially the co-parenting after divorce in the best possible ways. So I was hoping you'd have some suggestions and insights for us about that.
Absolutely. So as you know, because I stand wholeheartedly behind role modeling and role modeling the behavior, hence role model maker, we find it very important to role model the behavior. And when we talk about divorce or separation or even consideration of it, usually what is happening is the individual is feeling that in order for them to exist, their physical, mental, social, or spiritual aspects of life are not being empowered, basically. We're not going to go into who's at fault or demonize the person who caused the separation, none of that. The point of it is that the reality ultimately is that two people could not coexist in the physical, mental, social, and spiritual realms. And although the divorce should be celebrated as an opportunity for these two people to exist fully now, for many of the parents, that message gets lost. And if you lose that, the result is that when you move on from that relationship, it's very likely that you might land in the same situation all over again. And oftentimes when we end up looking at relationships, we look at the other person or the other side of the story, and we don't give enough credit to ourselves for being a contributing partner in that situation. And if you're repeating this, if the situation is different, but you're the constant basically from one relationship to the next, then guess what? Maybe you need to have that relationship with yourself in the physical, mental, social, and spiritual realms. And again, this goes back to role modeling, because if you are the parent before the separation, you're still the parent after the separation. And if you're coming in contact with your child, they're looking at who you are, what you do, how you carry yourself in the world. And they are basing their model of the universe on basically how you are. Even if they decide, I'm never going to be like that, they still modeled it after you somehow, right? So you had an influence on that. So you want to make sure that this is as wholesome and as positive as it can be for the children. So that's usually my approach. It's not necessarily to look at what the problem is, but what the solution is for the individual and how can they pass this on to the next generation so they don't repeat this cycle over and over again.
Yes. And so we want to be authentic and we want to be honest with our children. And at the same time, we don't want to be burdening our children emotionally with information that is not appropriate for them at whatever age they are. Even teenagers' brains are not developed to the point when they should be dealing and coping with adult information. So how do you suggest parents deal with that?
I would definitely recommend to you guys that take control where you have the most control. You don't have control over the kids. You don't have control over your partners. You don't have control over society or your job, but you do have control over yourself. And I'm not even talking about what goes on around you, but what goes on inside of you. So let's focus on those 4 realms that I talked about and look at how you can develop that relationship with yourself. So when we talk about the physical realm, so like sometimes separation happens because of physical abuse, right? Now, when it comes to physical you, there is what's inside of you. So do you take care of your health, your fitness, your mental health, all of those things? Or do you kind of let those go the first moment that stress comes, the first moment that you're inundated with responsibility, you start forgetting about sleep, you start skipping meals and those kind of things, right? So that's part of your physical existence, right? You need to allow room for that to exist. And that's part of the reason why the separation is happening or has happened in the past, because you couldn't, or they couldn't allow room for you to exist. So you need to start where you have control. You have room for yourself to allow yourself to exist physically. And now that's the inside part, but also around you. Do people violate your space? Do they come in when you're in the bathroom to ask you questions, for instance, like those little ones? Or do you say, no, this is mommy's time, or this is what I need to do right now because I just got home and I need to have 5 minutes to myself before I can come and be there for you, right? So that physical space. And in some cases, do you have a physical space, like as in a chair or a desk where your stuff is sacred and nobody touches that, right? That is part of your physical space that you need to exist. Like if people come and move your stuff around, they're disrespecting your physical space, right? So you got to be very vigilant about how you're showing up in the physical realm, basically. So that's part one. You can take control of that and say, hey, this space is mine. Do not touch my stuff here. Right? And everybody needs to respect that. And you're teaching respect in that process too. If you can respect yourself by saying, this is my space and I am going to allocate this to be mine and put my stuff there, then other people tend to fall in line and respect you as well. So you'll be very surprised when you take this approach, how all of a sudden you end up with boundaries that before didn't exist, and people would simply violate it, and they would come in and do stuff that would be against your wishes. So that's the physical space. Then there is the mental space. Now, with the mental space, there's 2 parts to it. There's the cognitive, the thought process, and then there's the emotional space. Now, oftentimes when we are communicating, one of the things that we say is like, you never let me finish, or, I didn't get to say what I wanted to, right? But how about this? How many times have you stopped yourself or put yourself down for thinking a thought or having a feeling, right? Why not create room and create space for your emotion to exist, for you to examine it and decide whether you want to keep that emotion or discard it? Does that emotion serve you well? Does that thought fall in line, is aligned with what your purpose, what your mission is in life? Is that how you want to show up in the world, right? First, you need to allow for it to exist and for you to be able to examine it and accept it, because it is your feeling. It is your thought. You need to value it, right? You need to respect it. And then from there, why did that thought come to me? Why did that emotion come to me? And can I repurpose it? Can I think of it a different way? Did it mean a different thing? Does it have to make me upset? Those type of things. And by evaluating it, then you can decide whether you want to keep that emotion, positive or negative, or you want to discard it. And I say positive or negative because what we want is peace, right? We want peace. We want to be at peace with ourselves before we can be at peace with the world, right? The world is filled with wars and conflict, and there's people that have some kind of an internal conflict that they're projecting it outwardly. Just look at the wars that are happening around, basically. Or bullying for that matter. Like you can pinpoint it at local levels, personal levels, community levels. And it has to do with the fact that people do not look for peace. They're looking for the things that brings them joy, and they want to run away from things that don't bring them joy. But the reality of it is that sometimes loss, grief is important. Sometimes anger is important, sadness. So you need to be able to allow those in. And you can't always run to the positives, because with every high, there's a low, right? So we want to make sure that we look for that balance. And I'm not saying that everybody's always monotone, but you need to cherish the highs and the lows, and you can't always run towards one and away from the other. So allow room for both of those to exist. That's the mental side. Then there's the social side of it. Some people that are in relationships might find this interesting, that they say, hey, I'm not comfortable with you going out with so-and-so, right? And all of a sudden you're disrespecting the other person's social sphere. Why not have a dialogue the same way that you had the highs and the lows for the emotions? Why not have that in a social sphere for yourself? Like, do you allow yourself to be socially yourself? Or do you kind of hide that person and you put a front up and you're not authentic to yourself, like we discussed earlier today, right? So that authenticity is important. Can you be a contributing member to the people that hang around you? Can they contribute to you socially as well? Because you want them to fit into your life and you want yourself to fit into theirs. And if there is this misalignment there, maybe you need to change social circles, right? So you need to allow room for yourself to stay in a social circle and truly authentically exist there. And you need to also feel comfortable that you can leave one social sphere and go to another one. This includes your work, for instance, right? So this becomes very important. And then the last part is the spiritual component. Now, when we talk about spiritual, you can think faith and God and universe and whatever you want to call it. But when I talk about spiritually, I'm talking about things that fill your cup.
Yeah.
I'm talking about love. I'm talking about things that bring you emotions that doesn't fit into anger and sadness. I'm talking about, what are you passionate about, right? That's the spiritual side of you. And by developing that, are you allowed to develop that? Do you allow room for yourself to pursue your dreams? Do you have a bucket list? What are you doing towards getting those bucket lists? Or are you planning that you're going to survive and struggle and grind so eventually you can retire one day so you can start living, right? That's like putting your spiritual development, your spiritual existence on hold for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. That's ridiculous. And we really need to change that mindset. And we want to make sure that we are fulfilled every single day. We live in peace and we live in joy every single day. After all, if you are sacrificing yourself so that your kids can have a better life, what kind of a lesson are you teaching them? Are you teaching them that they come last? Are you teaching them that they just need to survive? Or do you want your kids to thrive, right? So all of this starts with those 4 rounds and creating that for yourself so that your kids can see how it's done.
Excellent points. We're going to take a real quick break, Dr. L, and we'll be right back.
That's good.
Okay. This is Rosalind Sedacca with WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This is Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living. And we're talking to Dr. L about the impact of being a role model through your divorce and beyond, so that your children are seeing the best you and you're living your best life despite the divorce and the challenges that are in your life. And I wanted to take what you've been talking about and ask you how we can share that with our children. Obviously, they're watching us, and a lot of it has to do with our being a role model and watching our behavior. Are there messages that we can convey to our children as well?
Absolutely. So the number one thing that I have seen over and over again, and that's kind of how I ended up getting the title Parent Whisperer, is that a lot of times parents inadvertently get in the way of their children's development and progress. So we need to, number one, make sure that we give them more credit and credibility than is apparent in their little bodies, basically. They're far more capable than we usually think about it, and they have the capacity to actually absorb and respond in the fashion that is far more quick and rapid than us as adults can do. Also, depending on the age of your children, if you're talking about kids that are like 6 to 12 years of age, these kids are amazing problem solvers. They problem solve better than humans can, better than adults can. In fact, it is almost superhuman. And I believe that in the future, we're going to look for children to solve global issues as opposed to the elderly and the grown-ups who have grown up in yesterday's world trying to solve tomorrow's problems. So that's part one, that credibility and making sure that you give them the opportunity to be useful, to be part of the team. So oftentimes when it comes to separation, it's a grown-up affair when we separate them, right? But the reality of it is that this might be them down the road. You never know, right? And if that is them, would you like them to have some experience on how to deal with it? Or do you want them to step into it fresh without any understanding of what you went through? Here's an opportunity for them to learn from the process, right? So give them that opportunity, give them the credibility that they can handle it. Yes, they were not the ones deciding on the separation, but at the same time, they are a part of the separation. So they need to be heard, they need to be seen, and they need to be part of the team that actually moves forward.
And I like your use of the word team, because I talk to clients about the family being a team and that we will always be a family. The form of the family is changing, but we are still a family. Your parents will always be your parents. Your parents will always love you, and nothing's going to change in that regard, which is comforting and supportive for children to hear and understand. What else can we talk to our children about to make them feel secure as they're going through a very challenging process?
Absolutely. So the second thing is that we want to make sure that we have conversation with the kids. So yes, first of all, we change that mindset that, they're not capable. We get rid of that savior mentality. We don't need to save our children. They're capable of it. They need to learn to process the thoughts, process the emotions, and then we need to be there by their side as they're processing, to put words into them so that they understand, this is what I'm feeling and this is how I can deal with this emotion. And that comes through dialogue and conversation. So conversation needs to be very non-judgmental, whether it is you're talking about the other person or the future person or your kids. It is very, very important for us to have what many experts have called nonviolent communication, basically. The point is that you want to make sure that you understand that whatever it is that's troubling us, whatever it is that is the topic of the discussion, is an opportunity to grow closer, is an opportunity to evolve as a person, both for you as well as your child. So having that dialogue is simply creating that sphere, that room where the kids or you might not allow yourself to be able to mentally create room for yourself to process. So now you have a soundboard. Now you have somebody that you can process with, and they need to be witness to this. They need to be part of that so they understand what's going on. And it needs to be always in a non-judgmental way. So instead of it that so-and-so did something, and as a result, now you're the victim, whatever that person did made me feel this way, or this is how I feel when that person did that. And when you put it in that context, now it's not what they did that's the focus, it's how you feel. And now talking about how you feel and what you're going to do to feel the same or different or feel more of whatever it is that you're feeling, that is non-judgmental. Basically, you're processing and the person can listen to you non-judgmentally and be witness to it and learn from it. So that's really important for the children to be part of that process, basically. So that comes from communication, that non-violent communication.
Yeah, nonviolent communication is a great term. Before we go any further, I wanted to give you an opportunity to let people know how they can find you and the services you provide.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I do have a gift for our audience members if there is that opportunity to
Sure.
go ahead and use this link that we're going to provide. It's called 5 Columns of Connectivity, and it has the ingredients that we just described in this, and then some further explanations on the essentials and the essence of what makes us humans and social creatures, and what has made us build these civilizations. Everything that you look around you has come from collaboration. None of it was because one person said that. You know that song, I Did It My Way? I actually don't like that song, because although it talks about perseverance, even that person was influenced by society, by parents, and their way of thinking, and how they did it. They still still required support and empowerment and inspiration from other people. So I don't think any person is an island. I think we all, whether we are in a relationship, coming out of a relationship, or separate, or going into another relationship, we're constantly being influenced. We always have support around us, and it's important for us to connect. And that's what the gift is for.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. So in the few minutes we have left, can you give us some closing thoughts to sort of bring this conversation together and remind parents of the most important takeaways you have?
So the takeaways is, first of all, create room for yourself to exist physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. That's number one. Number two, open room for dialogue and give credit to other people. When you give people the opportunity to rise up to an occasion, they become bigger and better, and they evolve, and people love to be around people who make them feel that way. So if you want to not end up alone at some point, you want to make sure everybody that you come in contact with has that opportunity, that when they're in your presence, they become a bigger person, a better person, a loving person, an ideal version of themselves with you. And you support, inspire, and empower them to do that and be that, basically.
Wonderful. So the Child-Centered Divorce Network is all about nonviolent communication and helping our children achieve being the best they can be, and getting both parents to understand the importance of their role in raising these children, especially after the challenges of a divorce, moving into co-parenting. Do you have any last thoughts about co-parenting itself?
Co-parenting requires additional consideration, and realize that whether you like it or not, that other person is still, you know, a guardian of your child, whether that happens to be somebody that you're living with, or somebody that is no longer with you. And you need to create that room for them to step into that role when the opportunity is for them, and for your child to feel extra support as opposed to less support, basically, because they're isolated.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. You have some exceptional insights that are useful through the divorce process, and obviously long after that for every parent. So thank you so much, Dr. L, for joining me today.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. See you guys.
And just as a reminder, this is Rosalind Sedacca with Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living. I'm the founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network, and we provide support for parents before, during, and long after divorce, helping you co-parent in the most positive, productive way, helping your children get through the process in a way that supports them so that we don't rob them of their childhood, and looking ahead into dating after divorce so that you can develop healthy new relationships and at the same time honor and respect your children so that they are not traumatized by any of the experiences that they are going through. And you could reach me at childcentereddivorce.com, and I have a free ebook on post-divorce parenting on the homepage of my website, childcentereddivorce.com. Until next time, this is WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network with Rosalind Sedacca. Look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye for now.
Yes.